I'd been a babysitter for years, working with several different companies and hundreds of families. This was just another job on a Thursday night. I drove to the house, getting there exactly on time, and met the parents. They were having a date night at a concert downtown and would be gone for 5 to 6 hours. It was 6:30 already, so this was a late job. They introduced me to their son, Jay, who was 10. He was very talkative and seemed to enjoy my company. When the parents left, he was excited to show me his video games and have me be his audience while he played. He played for around 2 hours before I started getting hungry. I let him continue playing in the living room while I made something to eat in the kitchen. I spent maybe 5 minutes heating up a meal, but then all of a sudden, when I got back, Jay was different. He wasn't talking anymore, and he seemed really shy. I tried starting up conversations, but he would barely respond. I had no idea what happened. I asked him if everything was okay, but he just nodded. I didn't want to be bothering him about it too much, so I pretended like nothing was wrong and watched him play some more. Once 9:30 came around, I told him it was time for bed and made sure he got ready. He was still acting weird, trying to avoid me and delay going to bed for as long as possible. Finally, just before 10, he got in bed. I went downstairs and sat on the couch. I was replaying the whole night in my head, wondering what went wrong, but there really didn't seem to be anything I did. I left him alone for a few minutes while I made food, and then it was like he just flipped a switch. While I was thinking on the couch, I heard Jay upstairs. He was walking down the hallway and then opened a door. I quickly went upstairs to see what he was doing, but he wasn't in the hallway. I opened the door to his room, and there he was, sitting in his bed just as I left him.
"What are you doing, Jay?"
I asked nicely. He looked scared of me. After no response, I just decided to let it go and began walking out the door, but then he said to me he had to use the bathroom. I said okay and let him go down the hall, but while he was in there, I took a look around his room. It all looked like an ordinary 10-year-old boy's room. Just as I was walking out, I noticed something in the corner of my eye. I looked over, and right by the closet, I could see someone's eye looking back at me through the crack in the door. I hesitated, then walked out of the room and closed the door. I listened and didn't hear any movement in the room. As soon as Jay came out of the bathroom, I told him to be quiet and rushed him downstairs and into my car. I dialed 911, and as we waited for them to show up, I asked Jay if he knew someone else was in the house. He was quiet, not responding to me at all. When the first officer came, he went right inside and caught the man walking around upstairs. He looked like a 30-year-old creep. When questioned, the man said he was a friend of Jay's and that Jay even let him in the house to babysit for the night. Strangely, when the parents got home, they basically pushed me away and didn't give me any more updates on what happened. There was obviously something really weird going on because Jay was very scared of him. I don't know if they knew each other or if this was a first-time encounter, but I hope it was all dealt with well by the police. I babysit as a part-time job. I worked for a few different sites before I settled for Sitter City. This specific babysitting site allowed me to work the random hours that I wanted and not have to worry about being able to babysit on a set schedule every week. On a Saturday morning, I got a job from a family requesting me to babysit their 2 kids from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. I worked mid-shift at my regular job that day, so this still worked for my schedule. Also, these late night jobs are always the best because the kids usually go to bed between 9 and 10, so I'm left to just relax until the parents get home. I accepted the job, and that night I drove over and met the parents 10 minutes early. They introduced the kids, who were both very young boys, I think 5 and 6 years old. They told me to just make sure that they were in bed by 9:30, then they left. The two boys were both pretty shy and watched cartoons for most of the time. I'd say half of the kids I meet are just like this though. At 9:30, I turned off the TV and got them in bed without any problems, then went downstairs and sat on the couch. I had 3.5 hours to myself before the parents got back. I brought headphones to prepare for this, and put them in and started watching YouTube on my phone. I was tired, so I needed something to keep me busy so that I wouldn't fall asleep. Like I said, these late jobs are the best because it doesn't feel like you're even babysitting, but the hardest part of it is not falling asleep. By 11, I was really pushing myself to keep my eyes open. Watching videos on my phone was starting to make me even more sleepy, so I put my phone down and got up. I walked into the kitchen to pour myself a cup of water, then stood by the table while I sipped on it, hoping to wake myself up some more. Then I heard a voice. It was one of the boys upstairs calling for me. I put my water down and walked quickly up the stairs and into his room. It was the older of the two. He was sitting up in his bed and looked really scared.
You okay?
I asked, sitting on the edge of his bed. He said in between his cries that he heard someone walking outside his room. I told him that it was okay and that nobody else was here, then tucked him back in. The other boy was in bed on the other side of the room, sleeping still, so I backed out of the room and closed the door quietly. I stuck my head into each of the rooms upstairs, making sure they were empty, then went back downstairs. I was sure the boy just had a nightmare. I got my cup of water and sat on the couch again. I was more awake now, so I guess that was a good thing. But then I heard it. Someone walking through the hallway upstairs. It sounded slow and careful, like they were trying to be quiet. I was terrified, but I had to keep the boys safe. I ran upstairs, but nobody was in the hallway. Then I opened the boys' room, and both of them were still asleep. I checked each of the rooms again, then went back downstairs. I was tired, and figured my mind was playing tricks on me. This time I took my phone out to keep me busy. Maybe a minute passed, when suddenly there were footsteps sprinting down the hallway upstairs. I ran upstairs, seeing nobody again, but this time, when I opened the boys' room, they were both sitting up in bed, looking terrified. I got both of them downstairs and into my car outside. I locked the car doors, then called the police and the parents. Both of the boys said they heard running footsteps outside their door, so I knew I wasn't just hearing things. When police came, they searched everywhere, but found no one. They didn't even find any signs of someone ever having broken in or staying anywhere inside. I don't know who or what we heard, but I know there was someone else upstairs. Needless to say, I never went back to their house to babysit.